The average millionaire has 7 to 12 different streams of income. And in order to get wealthy, you need to create more than one stream of income so that your wealth is growing at a disproportionate rate to the amount of time you're working. It's very difficult to get wealthy if you're constantly trading your time for money. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to create more than one stream of income so that you can start accruing wealth over time. Now, let me first start by saying that this is all information that I have gathered and learned on my own journey over time. I grew up in a blue-collar family. My father threw suitcases in the bottom of airplanes. He was a luggage handler at the airport in Philadelphia. My mom was an ER nurse, and I grew up thinking that if you wanted to make money, you had to work really, really hard. Now, hard work is part of the process. It's almost impossible to get wealthy without working hard. But the difference between poor people and middle class people and rich people is that rich people learn how to disconnect the time that they spend working with the amount of money that comes in. And the way to do that is by collecting assets, is by generating a balance sheet that has cash flowing assets. I first learned how to do this by reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was, I think, 17 years old. I was on the subway in Philadelphia and I was reading the book, and it was this section that showed the different graphs of how cash flows from different personal balance sheets. So poor people, they create income, they generate income, usually in the form of a paycheck, and then that money instantly flows to expenses. So you get a paycheck, that paycheck is already taxed by the government, and then that money is used for expenses, food, rent, maybe a car payment, whatever else it is that you have to pay for. And maybe if there's a little bit left over, that money can get put into a savings account. And the idea is that slowly over time, you can generate a savings and maybe you can work your way up to a higher paying job. But it's very difficult to break that cycle because even if you have a higher paying job, the flow of cash remains the same. You make more money, then you just end up having more expenses. So poor people live income to expenses. Middle class people live from income to liabilities. And basically, middle class people are in a lot of times a worse position because they buy bad assets. They buy things that depreciate in value, and they usually buy those things on credit. So they get a paycheck. Usually middle class people has a higher paying job, right? So let's imagine that you're a doctor. So a doctor gets a paycheck and that money instantly flows to liabilities. So they have a car payment. It's usually a pretty expensive car. They have a mortgage. The mortgage isn't considered an asset because it's taking money out of your bank account. So it goes from income to the liabilities. You got a car payment, you got a mortgage. Usually you got credit cards. Middle class people are more than likely completely flipped, where they have more credit card debt than they actually have income. And then from the liabilities, it then goes to expenses. So to say again, middle class people get paid in their paycheck. They pay off their liabilities. They pay off their debts. Whatever's left goes to expenses. They buy their groceries. They change the tires on their car, whatever the expenses of the month are. And then again, from that standpoint, they usually put some money into the stock market or 401k, thinking that if they work really hard at age 75, they'll be able to retire and have like 5 good years of rest and relaxation. Now, rich people see this as exactly the opposite. Rich people don't create an income for themselves. What they do is they build a collection of assets. So an asset in this definition of the word is anything that generates cash that goes into your bank account. So if you have a rental property, there's a big difference between owning a rental property and owning a home, because owning a home isn't technically an asset in this definition because it's still taking money out of your bank account and giving it to the bank. But if you own a rental property, yeah, you may have a mortgage, and yes, you may be in debt on that mortgage, but the home itself is generating cash into your bank account. So rich people live off of assets. They collect assets, and those assets themselves are cash flowing. So it goes from assets to income. That's the flow of cash for rich people. So this sounds great. It's an easy concept to understand, but how exactly do you start collecting assets? Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to do this. What I have done is my own experience, and this is the experience that I will share with you. I created a cash flowing business. This is why I always advocate for people to create an agency, because if you have an agency, you're instantly cash flowing and you're instantly profitable. And then over time, as my agency grew, I didn't put those profits of the agency into my personal bank account. I took those profits and I bought assets with them. So a lot of times what I have done is I bought other websites, other cash flowing online businesses. From that point, it makes it much easier to build those businesses because I already have the agency itself, which can facilitate the work and facilitate the marketing to grow the businesses that I've acquired. So the first step, and this is the step that a lot of people struggle with because this is where the hard work comes into play, and it takes patience. You have to own your own stream of income. You have to have a way to have equity in a business, basically, because you can work a 9 to 5 and start putting money on the side to buy other businesses. And granted, that's definitely a way to do it. I don't want to discourage you from doing that. But the speed at which you can generate cash and generate profits is so much faster if you are the one that actually has equity in the business. So to summarize all of this, the first step in creating multiple streams of income is a mindset shift. It's not about working more. It's not about working on more than one project. It's about actual ownership. It's about equity. It's about owning a piece of something that cash flows. You can get debt to get that piece of equity. You can save your money to get that piece of equity. However you do it, you're never going to be able to get wealthy unless you have cash flowing assets that generate wealth for you. That's the first step, is a mindset shift. The second step for me was to create a business that cash flows on its own. I know that if I continue to market my business, the business will grow and the profits will grow. That has been a really important step for me. Again, maybe you could take out a bank loan, you can borrow money from somebody else, but I don't like to owe the bank too much money. So I liked to be able to acquire assets on my own dime. Again, this is my personal preference. The third step is to reinvest those profits into cash flowing assets. So what does this mean? This means that you don't actually have a lot of money in the bank at any given time, because you have to understand that money is just transfer of information. It's not necessarily something that has any value. It's the services and the products that generate the cash that has the value. So if you ever have an overabundance of money, the first thing you want to do is get that cash out of your bank account and buy a product or a service that actually holds the value that can generate more cash. And then what you do is you create a flywheel and you continue to repeat the process over and over and over again, so that hopefully within 10 years, 15 years, you can have a life where you have assets that just put money in your bank account for you, so that you're not working 60 hours a week trying to grow your business, so that you're not the CEO of a company managing hundreds of employees, because yes, that CEO probably generates a lot of income, but most likely that CEO is still falling under the trap of the middle class cash flow quadrant, where he gets a paycheck, pays off his liabilities, and then pays off his expenses without actually acquiring assets. Multiple streams of income is the key to wealth. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like my videos, please leave a comment. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you didn't like. Really been enjoying these videos, and I look forward to talking to you next week. All right, guys, thanks.